Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the Improvisational Storytelling Podcast, where we bring you stories every single week. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And if you guys, no Seth today. If you guys remember last week, when we wrapped up our previous story, we were doing the recap episode, and we drew live on air our story elements for this week. Just as a little recap, Reed, you got sequel, I got economic system, and Seth got pantheon. Now, since there's no pantheon for Seth, there's no Seth, so there's no pantheon, we can Reed just probably wait and see if he wants to bring that next week. Sound good?
Good with me.
So that's what we're going to go through. So with the sequel, Reed is just going to talk about how this story connects to the Great Reset, which was the story before, and the economic system just kind of displays how people conduct their sort of day-to-day transactional business in an interesting way. Obviously, we are free to do any world building we want, and we can tie it all in at the end. Let's get right into it. Reed, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think I should start. Well, last time we had a 3-part story called The Great Reset, and I have drawn sequel. However, The Great Reset was, in fact, a sequel of a previous 3-part story known as Hero from the Past. And I'm going to just briefly remind everybody how this kind of, now I guess we're a trilogy starting today. It was kind of, let's see, what did Seth call it? The genre. He said kind of a built-up society after apocalypse. So there had been some kind of disaster and society had broken down, and and people were building back up. So there were a number of issues of lost technology and some things like that. And I think the important parts is that there was a very interesting character that Seth introduced in the second portion of that one, called the hero sidekick, was Charles, and he was kind of a prepper guy. And the current Charles in our story was a few generations down from the original Charles, who back during, as society was leading up to the coming apocalypse, he was kind of a prepper. And he had a bunker and guns and kind of gumption. He was a guy that, and he kept a generator going, and he kept a whole bunch of equipment and stuff in order to keep things going when shall we say, the proverbial brown stuff hit the fan. And one of the things that he did is he had stolen a bunch of stuff from a cryo lab. And there was a guy, a friend of his, we call him Teach. He had been a school teacher. But he had this school teacher had particular access to what Levi introduced as the unique pet, hundreds of billions of nanobots that in our new story, only our hero can connect with, because he is kind of like as a result, kind of the repository of the old knowledge. And what the original Charles, back when everything was going bad, he knew that we were going to have to keep Teach under cryostasis and bring him back when things, calmed down, so that we could start to rebuild. So that's kind of the hero and the hero sidekick of that story. And then there was a villain, of course, who had inherited what we called, he was the inheritor of the withered hand. And it was genetically, he had a bad hand, the kind of withered, that was, didn't function very well, but it was something that he could kind of, it was a mechanism. He could access the old tech. He also was somebody who could access it. And he kind of set up shop, restoring buildings in a kind of an old crumbling part of the city. And he was kind of a warlord, kind of cruel for the sake of control. But he also, so this was kind of a battle between who was going to run things. And there was a unique weapon that was introduced in that story called Operation Firestorm, which was kind of a fail-safe. And it was a code that it enabled the wielder of that weapon to shut down these nanobots to get them to self-destruct, because it was a very sophisticated, it was one of those technological advances that sort of takes over, and
right.
and everything is so much easier. Think AI, but this is different than that. And so that was kind of how that story was going. And then as a random insert at the end, I call it the Pinta, the Nina, and the Santa Maria. It was a space mission from a distant planet to kind of check up on the mother planet. And they had gone off and they had established, civilizations, and it was a long, space travel, interstellar space travel is just kind of a long ordeal, and, sometimes spanning generations and all that. So they show up on the scene right as the struggle between the bad guy and Teach and Charles, they're trying to reestablish, the reaccess the order, and by reaccessing the old knowledge, so to speak. Well,
that's the end of
Heroes from the Past. So then the Great Resets comes, and it's some generations have gone by, and the people from the space mission are still human, but they're changed. They're kind of alien. For example, some of them had settled on a planet that had a little bit heavier density and mass of their planet, so the gravity was heavier. So they, developed, kind of a bulkier, denser bones, muscular structure that could handle, a heavier, that kind of thing, heavier gravity. And that scene, I think, is important. There was an important thing that happened. The beginning scene is there was our hero was dreaming, and he, in his dream, he was walking through a forest, and he comes out on kind of high ground overlooking a vast city. And a giant hand comes out of the ocean and kind of smashes down on the port. And then a second hand comes out, and then a head comes up out of the ocean. And his face, it's his face on the head. And then he wakes up and then he realizes he's part of the grid, the technology, the system that this city was made out of. And so as we enter in now, several generations later in the sequel, we have, the villain was thwarted when Teach woke up, the nanobots, and he was further thwarted when the aliens landed and kind of retreated to kind of leading the rebellion. The hero, works with the hero of the news story. He was a law enforcement guy, and works with the aliens that were involved in keeping order. And there was a tendency toward kind of a pride-based resistance. People don't want these newcomers from outer space kind of coming in and taking control of everything just because they have, they still had the old tech working and whatnot. And so there was this kind of tension going on. And the quartet members entered then in the next episode. And we remember from, we use this expression, the quartet members, quartet, the ka being like destiny, and then the members of the quartet are people that are drawn together kind of by common destiny. And there was this Chase Allen Person is the name of the guy, and he was the dreamer from the opening scene. And he had some augments and had the neural link installed and had kind of this unique genetic marker that was shared with Teach. Well, now Teach was the second member of this quartet, but he was kept, it wasn't the actual physical Teach, but it was the nanobots. His consciousness had been reassembled and he was kind of this ancient ancestor. And there was the third member of the quartet was actually the AI of this link, and that was able to kind of hold it all together. So this was the quartet. And And the wise old man was actually in the form of three different individuals. One was living it was Martu, Luth, and Marth. And Martu lived in the city, ran a bar, and he kind of navigates the new system. He was like trying to figure out how to make it in with all the disparate kind of pulls and pushes and pulls and the different people and the different power structures involved. And then there was one of the guys, Luth, was a hermit, kind of off in the boonies, and the third guy, Marth, was kind of in a position to counsel the rebels his desire was to counsel the rebels into kind of a positive course. Anyway, he was a figure connected with the rebellions. So here's this thing that's this story that's developing and kind of like round two. And there was a unique vehicle in this story in which Chase, he's Chase Allen Persons, he was able to activate
not Chase. Chase's brother.
Yeah.
Remember, because Chase is a set of triplets.
Right.
Or a set of three brothers. Chase is the middle brother, and he takes the place of the anti-hero. And then his older brother is the one who is sort of working with the Outworlder police. He takes the place of the hero.
Yeah.
And then the villain takes the place of the younger. Oh, it's one of those.
Yeah.
Maybe Chase is the youngest. Anyways.
Yeah.
And the villain has the vehicle.
He can interface with all systems. And he can kind of like, his consciousness can travel through the network. And he's sort of a freedom fighter in a way. But he's got his own motivations. He's kind of, I think that often happens when you have somebody that is rising in power, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
And this story in particular, I feel we talked about it a bunch during our review episode, but this story in particular, I felt really ashamed that we weren't like sticking to any sort of common system. I was just kind of jumping around at all these different ideas. And so hearing Reed talk about it really reminds me. So Reed, can you get done talking about it soon so I don't have to be embarrassed anymore?
Yeah, okay. All right.
Do you want me to?
The sad ending though was that the AI member of the quartet, he saw that things were kind of in trouble. But being AI, his whole thing was, his programming was to hold the whole thing together, and somehow he came across Operation Firestorm, the code that the kind of self-destruct fail safe, right?
Right.
And he so our story ends with him shutting down, basically the nanobot system they just shut themselves off.
And because all the Outworlders built all of their systems on the same code, and all the help that they had supplied to humans were built with their technology, it was kind of like a race to of destruction.
Right.
Right. As ships tried to take off as they heard that something terrible was moving across the networks, and some of them made it off and some of them crashed. Some of them made it off, but Earth is essentially, in my opinion, Reed has the sequel, so he can decide for sure. But Earth has kind of been quarantined now. Get too close to it, and your systems will begin to interact with the networks on Earth or on the satellites, and your ship will just like self-destruct, basically.
Yeah. So here we are with the sequel. We're like 300 years later since Operation Firestorm, and all tech dependent upon the nanobots ceased to function. Okay. Society didn't, immediately descend into the primitive, because some things were relatively easy to reverse engineer to mechanical or manual control. Plumbing, for example, and electric power took longer. But these are things that, it wasn't like all learning was lost. It was just that the any nanobot based tech ceased to function. That's all.
Okay.
The off-world physical differences began to lessen, like over a few generations, you tend to readapt to what kind of a situation you're in. I think we'll see that, that things can change quickly, like with some of the populations of immigrants, for example. 3 generations in here in the United States, and you'll have average heights will be several inches taller than their grandparents, just from different diet, probably. I don't know. You could make I don't know all the. I'm sorry to bring this up without any. I really haven't read any of the research, but it is a reality. But anyway, so some of the physical differences were lessening, so to speak, but it kind of put everybody on even footing. And interstellar comms were still down. So that's where we start with our new story is rebuilding. So I guess I hadn't gotten farther than that. I was kind of
okay.
Yeah.
So you're thinking 300 years in the future,
right?
We still have what would be considered modern day level of technology.
Well, not completely, because it's been a struggle to try to rediscover how did people do things before the nanobots,
Right.
And
right.
Yeah. So there are some things that are relatively primitives, that, boy, we got to have food. So, and
right.
Kind of reinventing the wheel, so to speak, how some farm implements were pretty rudimentary because we just got to get the job done, get the crops in the ground and let them grow and harvest them.
Yeah.
But it isn't all the way back to primitive, because, there's still advanced materials that haven't degraded, that were built through, forging and whatnot, that was streamlined with the nanobot technology, but we still had a lot of the product of that. It was learning how to do, forge and engineer and fabricate new materials. It was kind of high on one hand and low on the other.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was thinking about as a world building aspect is you've read Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern,
yes,
right? And the idea that the thread comes, what is it, every 200 years?
Yeah.
Right? What if it's kind of the same? What if there's a same element to this, right? What if there is it's a 2-part thing? When the AI, the third part of the quartet, activated Firestorm, it corrupted his internal system, like trying to pick up a boiling pot of water by the base in order to spray it on somebody.
Right.
It affected him because he was also built in the AI internal system. So here's what I'm imagining. Every 30 days or so, or every 4 months, or every year, or something like that, this satellite, which is in deep orbit, comes and orbits the planet for 24, 48 hours, something like that, okay? And during this time, I was thinking kind of like a zombie apocalypse kind of thing. So 300 years is a bit much, but what happens is this thing comes down, and then like all of the electronics, which don't work at all, get re-powered because they were powered via this satellite, and they all wake up. And so it's like total war for every couple of months. It's total war for 24 hours, right? And so people who have started to develop rudimentary networks, have to harden them against the Firestorm, the virus that is still sort of active and firing off in this satellite. And it comes down, and it sort of has corrupted and turns all. I was originally thinking everybody with augments kind of goes all crazy, and you have to like fight them off. So it's kind of zombie apocalypse. But instead of that, it could just be all the machines. So it's kind of a pseudo machine versus human thing. And so one of the human initiatives, or one of the people initiatives right now, is we need to get to a rocket that can, and it's split on what to do with the rocket. So they have a rocket, they have enough fuel to get a rocket, and one group of the government wants, or one group of the powers that be wants to take the rocket and land it on the satellite and disassemble and shut down and reclaim the satellite. And the other one says, it's too dangerous. We don't want to put anything intelligent in the rocket. We want to build a payload and just blow up the satellite. And that would essentially stop the this kind of every 30 days or every 2 months. Let's figure out a date. Every 4 months. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's go with 4.
It's enough time to get stuff done, but not enough time to really be comfortable, right? Because the idea is that every 4 months, anything like all of these old equipments come alive. So we're talking millions and millions of manufacturing sites that make, hundreds of millions of, humanoid-sized robots, right? These are automated factories that people didn't know about and were locked away. But since this firestorm, this weird corruption between the AI and firestorm, they now come. So it starts, you can tell because all these things start lighting up and all the manufacturing begins and it produces some amount, enough to overrun all of humanity. And then as this satellite is kind of moving around the planet, they kind of follow that. So it's kind of like a wave that passes over the planet. And the first couple of times this happened, it was like total destruction.
Yeah.
Right? It was just total and complete destruction, right? People were hiding. People were barricaded in. They thought that, each of the Outworlders thought that a different Outworlder had sent people in. And so it's that's a way to have kind of a villain without an actual villain. Here's an insurmountable thing that needs to be tasked, and now it just gets down to politics, which I don't know if it still does, but Webster's dictionary describes as the sum total relations amongst people.
Yeah, that's my favorite definition of politics.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So there's like this cataclysmic event that happens every 4 months, and the people are kind of trying to figure out how to deal with it. And that's what brings in the economic system.
Okay.
So the economic system is all based on one of the Outworlder ships that saw this coming. They were a strange. They never got control. Not got control, but they never got a ruling part of the planet. They were never allowed to because of how strange they were. They traveled, when they were humans, they traveled to distant places that had very harsh light, right? Light that gave off really significant radiation. And so their ships were blocky and stranger than the others. And they were able to basically, their shielding, their radiation shielding was able to protect them from the contact transfer of the firestorm virus, right? So their ships were not initially destroyed or hurt, right? Now, the couple of the ships left, but a couple of them didn't. And I'd say of the 150 ships that were on the planet, 75 left, and then 75 were destroyed in the coming months, right, as the firestorm virus effects really took hold and, machines started to go crazy and destroy things. These are large, blocky ships, and the outside kind of looks like caked on clay. It's a strange mixture of chemicals that they have developed in order, and they are strange. They look the strangest of all the people, right? Large eyes, pale skin, kind of a quiet whispering way to speak, excellent night vision. They lived for thousands of years, or for at least 1,000 years in like darkness, basically, in these strange other parts of the universe. And now part of the economy is the fact that their ships can still land, right? But they are still considered kind of weird and kind of dirty, They are strange, and because of that, people don't trust them. So even the other Outworlders, even though there was the option to like get on these Outworlders ships and leave, they wouldn't, because they're just, it's like, there's a word for it when you see something that looks almost human but doesn't look quite human. People couldn't recognize humanity in them anymore.
Okay.
And there were stories about extreme things that they had done to their own genealogies in order to survive in the harsh conditions that made people just not want to not want to be engaged with them. But part of the economic system is the fact that there are giant ships around the city of theirs that are crashed.
Yeah.
And if you can harvest that goods, you can line computers and things with it, and it will protect it from the inevitable. It will harden it, right?
Right.
And so this economy has arisen, and it arose when people began to see that the government or the powers that be, I assume that some kind of government was put in place. Maybe there was some struggle at first, but still there's some kind of organization of power that people are working and serving under, begin to make deals with these slimies or whatever, slur they use.
Yeah.
To purchase large quantities of this.
The shielding.
Yeah. To line the rocket. And that has been kind of humanity's, like everything that humanity has been looking towards now for the last 200 years.
And the fact that their ships can still land, they have kind of a monopoly on shipping, on commerce. Right. Yeah.
And they don't seem interested at all in taking people off the planet or bringing other people to the planet. And that weirds people out. And people who go, they'll let anyone onto their ship, right? But you never see the person again because they take them away. And it's just like this strange, they're just a strange people who have moved maybe past the place of humanity, who are left to themselves for so long that they've moved past the place of humanity. One of the things that sort of tied a lot of the Outworlders together in their federations is that they still kind of all could see themselves in humans. You know what I mean?
Right.
And these slimies or whatever have never, when asked, they say that my home is there, and they point to an empty part of space.
Yeah.
It's like they came along because it was like an interesting thing, and now they're in kind of like this really lucrative place, So some people blame them. Some people say, some people are beginning to forget and blame them and say that they're the ones who brought this. There's lots of, anyways, the economic system is this mineral, right? So people will go out into the forests and things and find it and then bring it in. But it's all kind of, there's always a tithe in the whole economic system. It's like, 10% for the ship, 90%, 10% for the ship, 10% for your employer, and then 80% for you, And it could even be something like when you line your house with it, when the invading kind of malformed robots and things come, they can't they can't pierce it. So there's a lot of superstition around it now. It's like everyone, it's like if you're smart, you carry a piece with you because it'll protect you.
Oh yeah.
From the demons in the machine.
Yeah.
It's like it's this whole kind of religious kind of ethos that's being, kind of gathered up towards this specific mineral, and who knows if it's actually has those powers. In reality, it probably doesn't, but humans oftentimes need something kind of more than they can understand to cling to in order to understand the world around them. So that's the economic system.
I kind of like that. It's so this is something that they aren't just dependent on this shielding. That this is something that these people have developed because of their need in the places they went in space.
Right.
So this is something that we could, mine it or harvest it or or in order to manufacture more of this stuff.
Right. Really where people are getting it from is they are going out of the cities and finding the ships that fell.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I see.
Right. The 75 or so ships that fell, and we'll call it more. We'll call it 7,500 ships, right? Because 75 ships isn't that much for 300 years.
Right.
But people have only been this concentrated effort for really the past 200 years. The first 100 years was just like chaos of trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. But now, maybe a church has opened up, kind of not worshiping the slimies themselves, but the holy mineral, and calling them the deliverers, and, because it really is, it's like impossible to fight. My thought is that the wave of these oncoming machines, the way that the governments and the way that the people in power have decided to fight it is by, instead of focusing outwards, is to just like turn their backs to the people on the outskirts and just be like, we need to finish the rocket as soon as possible.
Yes.
Like, we're enriching uranium as fast as we can, and all of a sudden now we're debating on whether or not we're going to board the ship or whether or not we're going to blow it up.
Cool.
So that is the beginning of this story. I think it's on a pretty good path. Reed,
yeah,
what do you think?
This is going to be fun. This is a very fun story. A little scary, a little creepy.
Yeah.
It's like that zombie apocalypse sort of vibe to it, which is funny.
But instead of zombies, it's robots.
Yeah.
Much more child friendly.
Yeah. I'll be back.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better. Just to recap what we spoke about. So we started out with Reed on the sequel. He positioned that we're 300 years post Firestorm. And then we did some world building where the Firestorm virus and the AI that had initially let it out from the Great Reset, the previous story, kind of melded into a terrifying virus that now every 4 months infects every machine and tries to kill everyone. The people of Earth, including the Outworlders, who are slowly sort of reverting back to human, but still kind of showing some of their traits, are attempting to build a rocket and to shoot down or board the satellite that is holds this virus and that orbits every 4 months.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking like this is like an orbit that had gotten disturbed somehow when the original Firestorm. So it flew off, but not enough to escape, and then ended up in a wide orbit through the solar system, and just like comes back into Earth orbit like every 4 months.
No, it doesn't have to go around the solar system. It could just go around the moon. It could be just a satellite that goes around the moon, and when it's shielded from Earth and the sun, can send and receive data.
Yeah.
And then comes back and then transmits that data down. But there's nothing to send. There's nothing to receive. It's only sending data. And so it comes down and is just projecting the Firestorm virus back onto Earth and then goes back. And that's why Outworlders have to be careful, because if they're in the path of receiving this data, then the Firestorm will jump to their ship, and then the ship and everything else. Anyways, we introduced the race called, the slur for them is called the Slimies. They're a strange, kind of most changed of all the Outworlders. They bring a material that can shield from the Firestorm, and that's the economic system is based around. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you have any comments about this specific story or cool ideas, let me know. Send me an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or message me on Twitter at @getsbettercast. I am happy to answer any questions, concerns, or constructive criticism. I do have a new way for you to talk to us if you should so choose. It's a website called speakpipe.com/waititgetsbetter. You can send us a little voicemail. We can play it on air, answer your questions. We'd love to hear you. I got links for that. I'll put that in the show notes as well as on Twitter. Thanks so much, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next week. Oh, Reed, we have to draw story elements real quick.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I forgot we're going to do that live on the air. Oh, my goodness. We'll just let Seth keep Pantheon if he wants. Otherwise, I'll ask him later if he wants a new one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Read number 1 through 13, including 1 and 13.
6.
You have famous person. I chose 3, so I get villain. Sound good, Reed?
Sounds great.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. We will talk to you guys next week. Bye.